Good evening, everybody. Happy Sunday. Welcome to the Sunday Open with Nick4aTick. I'm Nick. Oh, how are we all feeling? How's everyone's weekend? Good to see everybody. I don't know about you guys. I didn't have last week in my bingo card, I guess. It was one of those where if you joined us last Sunday, um, we saw kind of a violent gap down that was quickly bought. And then we just kind of ran away. Almost one of those moves and a break of balance that you kind of forget to chase, especially if you were kind of in the summer trading mindset where things are slow and you're like, I'll just wait for it to pull back. And eventually it never does and just continues to grind higher. This very much could be that break of a 3-week balance, even more than that if we kind of go back a few more weeks, that kind of locks people out, I think, for potentially part of the early parts of July. How did we all do last week? I guess that's the first question I kind of want to put out there to the chat. Was anyone kind of positioned well for this? I mean, I was kind of waiting to see were we going to drift back down, retest the gap, maybe go back to kind of the week open, and which really was almost the opening tick under 6,000 when the week kicked off last Sunday. Kind of not my favorite thing to jump into. If you remember last Sunday, it was something I had kind of said a little bit tongue in cheek because we had the news from the previous Saturday with us, sending missiles into into Iran, and that doesn't necessarily smell the initial kind of knee jerk bullish reaction, and but it was immediately bought, and we had kind of talked early in I guess last Sunday's show where I was kind of saying this is a week where no matter how you're prepping, how you're thinking about it, it may be a good idea to just be ready to quickly crumble it up and throw it away, because you could have that knee-jerk reaction or a ceasefire or anything that could just cause us to just shake off that news and get back to our regularly scheduled summer programming that is the grind up that we are currently in to new all-time highs. And, if it wasn't for the lasting reminder of how quick a tweet can send us back down the elevator shaft, I mean, if you weren't paying attention Friday afternoon, you got a real taste of that once again, where Trump hit the airwaves, talked about there will be no trade deal with Canada, and basically just said, he's putting it back out there that how quick the things can turn, and how the tariff war could be back on. And then I'm not saying this week with the holiday that is 4th of July and the half day of Thursday, but it's a good reminder to keep your head on a swivel as we head towards whatever we're going to coin the phrase on Trade the Close with me and my friends. I'm sure what was Liberation Day and Good Time to Buy Day, those phrases that we continue to throw around, we'll have to see what July 9th brings, which is the alleged, I say this tongue in cheek once again and in quotations, because allegedly July 9th will be the day that the 90-day pause on all of the tariff conversations with all of these countries could eventually stop, and we could have a situation like Canada, in fact, a variety of them, where no deal is reached, and it could give the market a nice reason to sell into almost the seasonality that is kind of the middle of July, where you get a little cool off of that blow off top, the all-time high March that we've kind of been in. So we'll see what next week kind of looks like. I don't have extremely high expectations heading into this week, just given that it's a shortened week, and everyone's going to be celebrating America's birthday later in the week. And like I said, we do have that half day where I really hope nobody's trading on Thursday. It's not the typical one like we had last week or 2 weeks ago, whatever it is now, where markets, or really just futures, are open for the half day. I believe everything's open on till noon ish, or 1 o'clock Eastern time on Thursday, and then everything will be closed pretty much on Friday. So I hope nobody is really looking to try to create or save their week on Thursday, but we'll talk about it. But just looking at this, guys, I mean, I was not necessarily caught off guard with this reaction. I just kind of was expecting some aspect of a retracement for the most part this last week. And I had a pretty decent week as far as my trading goes. I think we had some good trades in the afternoon as well. I think I did with Stowe and XY when we were on. So there was plenty of opportunity. If this isn't even your favorite tape, where obviously the summer doldrums that we're kind of in and everything just kind of consolidates and then we get another bid higher and then it consolidates again and we make another move higher. This week with the holiday, looking at ES, I mean, I want to be proved wrong. I want to see, do we get any sort of gas above this little box that I drew here? And this is basically going to equate to 6200s on the old S&P. If we really see something from buyers this week, I mean, that's where I'd love to see volume really start to build and consolidate in this area, not just come up and kind of kiss it and then we reject and fall back into balance. If we see that, I mean, I maybe with two hands could be looking to kind of reoffer with some sellers if they get any momentum inside of this kind of 6220s area, last week's value area high. I'm just keeping this kind of cautiously bullish, but without us kind of bidding above that, I would expect some aspect of last week to be retraced. I don't know if that's going to happen this week with the shortened week and the holiday. We by all means could be on low volume, just continuing to drift higher, but I'm just cautiously going to be watching this area around the 6250 mark in ES, just to see if there's any sort of reoffer there in the early parts of this week. Obviously, I'm just kind of looking at this like volume build week by week, but in the event that we do get some aspect of a reoffer there, then I would expect us maybe to come down and retrace back down maybe 100 points or so. Not saying this week, I'm just saying over the next week or two, that's kind of something I'm going to continue to be watching. When you have this kind of structure from the previous week, it's almost like even if you are bullish, you kind of want to see us cool off and come down in just a touch, even down here towards the 6150s would make a lot of sense. There was a ton of volume traded there, even in the kind of middle of last week before we kind of made that next leg move higher. But I just would like to see that potentially come back and kind of just heat check this break of balance, if you will, if not even a touch lower, back down towards kind of the 6100, 6115s, which is kind of where I'm putting my pivot for this week. Like I said, I don't know if we're going to see that sort of retracement and kind of retest the top edge of this 3-week balance that we were in, but it's something I'm watching. In fact, I wouldn't even really be looking outside of my intraday shorts, not looking to get too bearish. I mean, this candle here it was a wake-up call, just a good reminder of on low volume in the middle of the summer, how fast a tweak can just move us back down. But it's hard to get too bearish, like at all, without any sort of push back into the 6100s. I just would, once again, be looking for us to kind of rebid off some of these areas or the top edge of this. But us kind of retesting it, heat checking it, coming down would make a lot of sense. Like I said, not necessarily this week because low volume, 4th of July, us continuing to march to another new all-time high. Even if we just came up in here this week and kind of kissed this zone, I mean, it wouldn't shock me. And then maybe we continue to kind of consolidate and balance in a tighter range around that 6200 to 6225 area. Like us balancing in the top edge of this distribution, maybe even this candle in the early parts of this week, I could kind of see. But there are some things that are going to move the markets, and we'll talk about some of the things that are on the economic calendar for this week. Lighter week, but they did cram a bunch of things in it. In fact, even our lovely Fed chairman is going to be speaking at an engagement, I believe in Spain. I believe it's an ECB thing. I think Lagarde's talking too. So we'll take a peek at that in the early parts of this week, but that'll be on Tuesday. But yeah, what time is it? I know I was just kind of rambling there. Welcome to the show. If everyone has trickled in too, I am going to also talk about the rest of the kind of big four here as far as things that are actively traded, as far as our traders that we've been hanging out with in the afternoon. But we will be talking about ES, NQ, CL, and GC. I may even throw a little YM there because I'm optimistic that YM is kind of a laggard in this move with the rest of the major indices, and it could looks a little more constructive, I think, too, for a wider move to the upside if we get some more continuation. So we'll talk about the YM as well. But outside of that, yeah, we'll talk about the economic calendar. We're not even going to talk about earnings this week because there's none. I mean, there's a couple, but nothing that's going to actively move the markets. And with the holiday, with the 4th of July, it's just a lighter week, guys. It's a great week. If you had a good week last week, you keep it light, keep it tight, and just kind of enjoy your 4th of July. I just, it's one of those weeks for me where I'm hoping to be well wrapped up, kind of, well before I trade in the afternoon on Wednesday, with the guys from the show. And I don't know, historically, this week has been a week for me that I've forced things in the past, and I'm not going to do that. I've been very good this summer about keeping the, not kind of digging into what I've done the first couple years of trading, which is just fall into the trap of, if on days that I'm not positioned to the long side on some of these slow, choppy days, that I just get myself in trouble trying to force action, force size, and fall into the trap of not necessarily even trying to short this, but just looking like forcing action and like hoping for these larger rotations. Then you're just stuck in a trade for a long time and it moves against you. You take a stop out, you get back in. And I've been good about kind of catching the early parts of the RTH, volatility and a little bit of the price action that the open kind of brings, and then just calling it a day. That's been the only reason I think I've had a great June. Could still be better. I think I've still made some mistakes here and there, but for the most part, I mean, I think I've kind of leaned into the summer trading, and I'm hopeful that will continue and not try to be a little too greedy. I've definitely taken a few $100 days and just kind of called it a win and move on to the next session. So as we gear up for the open here in a couple minutes, what does everyone think? I would imagine this week is not going to be anywhere near as violent of an open as we saw last Sunday. In fact, how fast we shook that off, I mean, I'd be shocked if we are not within a few ticks right around settlement. So give me your predictions in the chat. Obviously, we make this joke every Sunday, but is it a gap up, gap down, or we're going to be right around settlement? If I'm a betting man, I'm not expecting any sort of fireworks, but I've been wrong before. But we'll watch it on my execution chart here in about 2 minutes for the open. Gap to 64.20. Come on, Stowe. Gap down, but not huge. Sorry, I'm now reading back to the chat. So welcome everybody. Thank you all for hanging out with me here on your Sunday evening. Let's see. I like a wide range the next couple months. I could see us consolidating in that kind of 6,000 to probably 6,400 even over the next few months, maybe even. Yes, we are at all-time highs. I think there is every quarter, but there's always the debate on Twitter on whether and what matters, how to, even if you do back adjust, why it's not a great indicator of kind of tracking all-time highs. I have historically always just kind of leveraged and used like the SPX and SPY to gauge for my own personal eyeballs as far as when we're at, near, or approaching an all-time high. I just think that's a better way to look at it. I like to use SPX, personal preference, but people like to back adjust and look at things that way. Like I said, I will use what is the actual prints on the old S&P. So I think that's just a better way to do it. If we run the all-time high tonight, I mean, that would be pretty shocking, but also telling, but also maybe not, because it's such a low volume, which I think is why when we do this in July and in the summer, sometimes we get a nice little retracement and kind of heat check on some of the bullish action that we see. It's kind of towards the middle of July. So that's why I was kind of saying, as we come into the open here in about 20 seconds, at least in this week and even into early parts of next week, I'm just kind of watching this 250 spot. Tomorrow we will have, unfortunately, the end of month flows in the room with us tomorrow afternoon. So that'll be fun. I won't be trading the close. I got a personal thing going on. So you'll be in the great hands of, I think Stowe's going to be covering for me. So he gets to trade when the end of month flows are in the room. So I meant to jump back to my execution chart for this small gap up that we had right around that 62.28 spot. So it'd be last week's value area high, which kind of grain of salt with that being the value area high. But so far, just an immediate gap up and go. Something we've been very familiar with, I feel like, the last couple of weeks. Just seems to be very much a lockout rally. Someone was talking about that on Twitter or X, whatever. But you kind of saw that even going back to parts of the April lows where there was a couple moves, even that gap, I think it was down toward 5,700, where it almost kind of felt like, I mean, there is a good chance we never really close that gap unless we get some sort of violent correction. But one of those moves that you kind of saw where we gapped up and went and you kind of locked people out, maybe that were not necessarily looking to kind of chase it. And now here we are, a new all-time high. So yeah, we'll jump to NQ here. I'll answer. Someone asked me a question, trying to find it. Hey, Nick, hope all is well, man. Question: how do you navigate all-time high territory? When you go into a trading session, what are you looking for to get long or short? So part of this is just a little bit of the pain muscle memory, just going back to even last year. And this is something too, guys. Like I talk about, I think my journey, I think Stowe talks about a lot about his journey, but it's something still like it's a constant work in progress for me. As I'm navigating something like all-time highs, it's historically even someone like me that was started, and I say started, trading futures kind of in the late parts of the bull run. And when I say started, I mean I was like paper trading on Thinkorswim and had absolutely no idea what I was doing, but free platform that I had traded options with. So I was learning and just kind of understanding what a DOM was, like how does this work? And I was doing something as stupid as basically just trading off like RSI and simple moving averages, just something just super basic. And like, that's how I was kind of getting exposed to it. But when you can couple that, I guess 4+ years later, and now we're kind of back to all-time highs. And if you remember last July, we had a very similar rally, probably a little different because we weren't coming off like a 20+% correction at that point. But we were just continuing to kind of drift up and grind. So one of the things I learned from last year is, you're pretty idiotic to try to call tops, even intraday at times when we're kind of near an all-time high. It's just hard to fight that momentum. So this summer, I've just not been really fighting the tape. If you get good short signals in the early parts of the day, I mean, by all means, take them. But I'm very scalpy with my shorts, where my longs, I'm trying to let them potentially play out a little more. So with that, it just comes down to like what you're seeing. If you're starting to see those, I mean, we had a couple of those trend days on last week where it's just, kind of just continuing to consolidate and drift up, but not necessarily changing a ton of how I trade and what I do, but I'm really just trying not to fight those slow, grindy moves to the upside in intraday. That I'm also just in a situation where if I, with us trading like this, with volatility kind of drying up at times, and you see that type of slow price action to the upside, it's also where if I'm green and it just starts to look like, we may just kind of drift or whatever, or the range is really tight, or you see something like an 8 to 10, not even 8, but like a very tight 5-minute opening range on ES that's like less than 10 points, I know I'm probably in for a snoozer of a session. So I'm not trying to take too much out of it. I'm not trying to create a ton more points. It's always one of those things where it's just, I talk about this a lot, where if I'm green, if I've had a decent session or whatever it may be, I just may touch grass the rest of the day. I may not put a ton of capital at risk. Volatility will return, ranges will always expand again, but just historically, summer is just a slower tape. So not trying to oversize, not trying to capture too much, just kind of getting in, getting out, getting my points and calling it a session has been the biggest difference I made this year versus last year. I just feel like last year I got in a trap of just continuing to try to trade that slow price action. And if I was on the wrong side of it, I had a bad day. If I was just reading things of like trying to call tops, I had a bad day. And that's, I would say, if you're trading all-time highs, like don't try to call a top. If you get momentum to the downside, I mean, you can join along with it, but trying to call a top intraday or a new all-time high, great, I'm going to short it. It's a fool's errand and you're going to get yourself into trouble. So I know there was a long-winded answer and we'll get to NQ here in a second, but I hope that answers. That's at least how I've started to navigate my scalps to the shorts, or my shorts to my trades to the short side, excuse me. I've always just tried to be very scalpy and get in, get out. If I get the move quickly, I'm not trying to get too greedy with shorts. Like I think a lot of mine, even with 2-3 contracts, I'm in and out 10 to 20 points, and I'm happily calling it a session because, that's 600 to $1,000, depending on size. So I'll take that all day. As a full-time trader, I mean, that's a decent day. That keeps me out of the 9 to 5. So I'm very happy with that in the middle of summer. All right. So NQ, just like we were saying in ES, very much did kind of break out of that multi-week balance that we were in to the upside. And it's hard to want to fade that, as we probably are just going to continue to march up, possibly to 23,000 if we continue to see what I was talking about in ES, where do we get that volume build up towards the 6250s? If not, does NQ decide it wants to retrace and kind of pull back towards that old level that I think for the last few weeks I was talking about, which was the top edge of this balance? And it even made sense going back to the old all-time highs, this kind of 22,300 to 22,200s. And we had the gap down. We continued to build. We completely traversed that 3-week balance area in about a session. And we ran up, we peaked above the kind of 22,400s. And then we even came back and retested it. We retested the top edge of that balance, and then we're off to the races. So just like I was saying in ES, I mean, I'm not looking to fade this. I just kind of want to see, do you get another poke above last week's high? And if we were to fall back inside this balance and we saw that momentum, I mean, I'm absolutely would love to potentially catch a short. Not necessarily this week, because I don't think it's going to happen, but I'm just on the lookout where if we do start to lose some of this volume up here, and if we, get any sort of momentum to the downside, I mean, would be looking for some aspect of this volume from last week to be retraced. If not, coming down here towards an area that I'm going to be watching if we get any sort of weakness to see if we find buyers, is going to be down here towards the 22,450s all the way down to kind of the 400s. Just as this high volume node, it may even be the point of control of last week. It kind of looks like it, like from the eyeballs, but do we get that sort of, area where buyers are going to come back in? And that would give me confidence to at least be looking for longs if you saw them step back in. And maybe that's kind of the new edge, or the new top, or excuse me, new bottom for the new range that we could be trading in the coming weeks, especially if we continue to see momentum kind of building to the upside. But in the event that we kind of continue to consolidate, then we're talking back down here towards the 22,300s, 200s, and back into the consolidation range of death that we were in for 6 weeks. So head on a swivel in NQ as well. It's hard to want to do a whole lot this week with with the holiday and just low volume. Historically, this is always a light week for me. 4th of July is one of my favorite holidays as it is. I just, I grew up in Southern California, so I spent a lot of time in kind of the Newport Beach area too. So 4th of July is always a lot of fun. I'm going to be full dad mode, unfortunately, for July 3rd for the foreseeable future. My wife's actually having surgery, so she won't be able to pick up our baby for a couple weeks. So I will be back on kind of dad duty for a little bit. So over the next week or so with this summer trading, I mean, I'm not looking to do a whole lot. But just given that we kind of had this violent lockout move again to the upside, I just want to see, do we retrace a little bit here? But in the event that we kind of lose last week's value area low inside the 300s, then you'd be back to this old balance area, and range rules, I would say, kind of apply if in the event that buyers don't step right back in here. So I'd be expecting them to, somewhere between kind of this 400s to 300s area. I would imagine we find some buyers again, but if not, back into the range of death. And I would imagine this is just becomes a very large consolidation area for the foreseeable few weeks, if not months, until there's a new narrative, or we see trade deals, or anything else. But it's hard for me to get too directional outside of just continuing this trend to the upside with some pullbacks to kind of retest the breakout, and then we continue to march higher in summer. We'll see. Come on. There we go. All right. So hopefully equities are not a snooze fest this week. I'm optimistic there'll be a decent trade in the early parts of this week before volume dies into Wednesday and everyone goes on vacation for America's birthday, but maybe we'll make a new all-time high until then. I kind of hope so. It'd be very un-American to not hit an all-time high, especially after we did last year, 13 days in a row. So we'll see. Moving on to crude oil. So everyone remembers that crude was going to hit like 85 at the early parts of last week after this violent gap up towards 78s. Well, did anyone catch this short? I honest and you know, honor system guys. But did anyone catch an amazing short last week in crude, at least in the early parts of this week before it went back to the bottom edge of the old range of death in crude oil that was 65s to 70s, going back to this time, basically, you know, I think it was end of July through, no, I think it was longer than that. I think we were in that range for months and months and months, kind of this, you know, rollover and things, grain of salt with the exact prices, but it was basically that range around $65 into about 70s. But seriously, did anyone catch a short? I think Tracy had a good statement around this Monday. I can't remember the terminology. I would hope she was in the chat, but she's not. So, but it was something around like the threat of war is bullish, but then as soon as it's not as bad, it just becomes like such a sell signal. I can't remember the exact phrase how she described it, but it basically played out exactly how she kind of teed it up on Monday, and we just continued to see that sell before settling down here, which is kind of like I said, the bottom of that old balance from last year, as well as even kind of the top edge of this old area is a little bit lower, so I'm not going to even say that, but coming down here to what I would say is a hopeful bottom, at least for the time being, with everything else going on geopolitically with the ceasefire and things, but doesn't mean we can't get another violent move back up to the upside if any sort of narrative or news changed as quickly as it possibly can. So if this holds, like if this kind of 65s to 64.50s area holds, even some of this volume going back to 3 weeks ago, kind of down here towards in the 64s, probably even as low as, what is that? 60, call it 63.20s. And I would be optimistically looking for a long, meaning like I'm doing it and then kind of like hiding as I long crude, just because I'm terrified, I guess, that we're going to kind of fall back down towards that old balance area we were in down here towards kind of the 60s into the 58s, these older areas that I just at that point I'm well out of this trade and want nothing to do with crude oil. But I'm still optimistic that this old area, there was so much supply down here going back to even parts of last year and parts of this year, where if we got any sort of momentum above 64s, I mean, I'm comfortable looking for a long to kind of retest at least the top edge of this kind of volume build from last week up here towards kind of the 67s. Outside of that, I mean, I would not be looking to get too greedy until there's any sort of change in this narrative. That is just a violent sell, a violent move to the upside on that headline from last week, and then just absolutely destroying anybody that was trying to stay long for the last couple of weeks. So now that we've settled and we've kind of have this little 3-week volume build here, it might make sense. Like even how we had this from 3 weeks ago, like we basically filled in this structure a little bit from 3 weeks ago with the last couple of days of price action here. So crude being in this tight range, not a whole lot I really want to do, but I'm comfortable at least taking stabs at a long or so down here, kind of in the high 64s, to see if you can get that rotation at least up here towards kind of the 66s, 66.50s. And then I'm like head on a swivel if I were to catch that move. So tough to trade, man. I don't know if anyone caught this short, but that is a hell of a move. So absolute violence, as sometimes crude tends to be when it breaks out of balance to the upside or to the downside. All right. Move on to GC. So with gold here, with the way equities have been moving, we still are stuck in this whatever you want to call this chaotic balance up here around the meandering around the all-time high up here at 3,500. But are we shaping up for what could be a generational short down towards 3,000 in gold? I have absolutely no idea. I'm just optimistically hoping that we're finally going to break this balance. And I just, for some reason, I'm just wanting to short gold down towards the 3,000. Ever since we kind of had this failed breakdown here and retest of it, I mean, I'm just kind of looking to see, do we finally get that all-time high push in equities that all is fine, everything is great, and the recession trade, everything else, every narrative that continues to push gold higher that people like to talk about just eventually kind of wanes and everyone gets back into other risk assets and we see gold just kind of fall off a cliff. We haven't seen it yet. In fact, all it's just been doing is basically consolidating between 3250 and 3450s for how long is this now? I mean, probably even further. Do I have enough data? No, I don't have enough days loaded to even look back further. But I mean, it's just tough to really have any sort of a longer time frame directionality with this outside of we're continuing to consolidate near all-time highs, and I want to be on the side of the move when it does finally break. And it just seems like we continue to kind of test it. We try and then it fails again, and then we try to get short and somebody steps back in around 3150s, 3200s, and just continues to keep us kind of in this large consolidation. So for some reason, something in my gut is just telling me to short this. I don't think that's a good trade thesis by any means, but I weirdly want to. I don't know what it is about these last couple weeks that makes me just feel like maybe if equities continue to grind, we're going to finally get this break. Or it's just because there's so much uncertainty that we're just going to continue to meander around this 200-point range. And that's just the way to trade it. Play it like a range and, hope for the best, that hopefully you're not on the wrong side of the eventual break of this large balance that we've kind of been in. But looking at this, like I said, do we get any sort of, failure up here towards kind of these 3350s, even June's month open here at 3220s? Maybe it's kind of the bottom edge of some of these value areas too. Does it make sense? Are there sellers continuing to kind of step back in and reoffer? Currently, we are trading around 3270s, right? Yes, 3274 looks like. So I don't know. Let's see if we get some more continuation weakness. This little last, I mean, I know it's just kind of inverse equities when you kind of look at it. It just continues to drift lower as we see more and more all-time highs. But if that continues, then yeah, I might be looking to trade some gold. Maybe not this week, but we'll see how this continues. I never love having any sort of trade thesis in a holiday week, even though if something is potentially setting up, it's just one of those where it's like, is nobody home? Is this going to get completely retraced when everybody comes back in a couple of weeks? I don't know. But yeah, I might be looking to potentially play this to the short side if we don't see some momentum above kind of those 3330s. But we are just stuck. Look at that. Tough to trade this, even if you've been gunning for us to go retest this all-time high up here at 3540s, or go make a new all-time high at 3540s, but it just continues to be offered whenever we get close. So I'm just taking that into consideration without another bad news headline or something. Maybe we're never going to get there. Maybe that's the ceiling for right now. And we go kind of retest some of these older RTH gaps as well. But yeah. And I know we talked about this, or I kind of made the joke that I was going to talk about the YM, but something about this break of balance for some reason seems more constructive to me than NQ and ES. I know they all kind of somewhat trade a little bit more correlated, but something about the YM breaking out above or breaking this balance to the upside, I just believe it a little more than I do NQ and ES for some reason. I don't know. Maybe it's just going to catch up a little bit since it was just a tighter consolidation that it was kind of coiling between kind of the 42,500s and the 43,500s, just that 1,000-point range that we were in basically all of May. Something just makes me feel like this is going to be potentially a violent breakout to the upside in YM, but I've been wrong before. And obviously they trade it's going to continue to somewhat trade in correlation with the rest of the indices, but I don't know. Something about this just looks a little more constructive to me. Maybe just because the range was just a little more coiled, a little tighter versus like the kind of stair stepping that we were seeing in equities, or excuse me, in ES and NQ. But I don't know. I kind of, I say this, like, I'm going to trade the YM this week. We all know that's not going to happen, but I'm just watching this. Is there a little more in this? Like, did we get a more violent move to the upside in YM and it kind of has an NQ type week? I don't know. It's the same exact story that we saw. You had the gap down. We tested the bottom edge of this balance, basically stepped right back in, and we were off to the races. But for some reason, I just like the look of this a little better than I do in NQ. But I'm not, let's be serious. I'm not going to trade the YM. Maybe I'll feel dangerous and do it someday. I talk a big game. It's just, I never back it up with something like this. I talk about like I'm going to trade this as if I'm not going to still trade NASDAQ almost every day like I do. But hey, I'm doing some analysis on it. So maybe something will change in the eventual future. Maybe I can convince Stowe to trade it with me one of these days. So gold breaking down. So my short gold thesis so far to kick off Globex here is working out. I mean, not by much, but I mean, we're teetering on last week's lows on what was pretty much a 2 weeks of trend to the downside. So maybe there's something to it. Yeah, Stowe's always down to trade anything. I really wish, Stowe, that the ag products were tradable during trade the close, because I really feel like that'd be a lot more fun. Maybe I can convince you to trade lean hogs on your segment in the mid morning, something, and I'll just throw shade from the chat. But I don't know. I wish the agricultural products were actually tradable in the afternoon with us, because I feel like we could just make some great TV off that. Just us trading pork bellies or something. But I don't know. Maybe we can petition the CME to keep them open longer. Just for us. For no other reason. Just for our entertainment in the afternoon. That'd be fun. All right. So with that, we'll jump to the economic calendar and earnings. I'm just going to jump on earnings just because there really aren't any. Nothing that's going to blow anyone's head back. It's just one of those weeks where there are a few names, nobody I really look at or even really know. But yeah, if these are any single stocks that you guys trade, Godspeed. I don't really know any of these names. So very, very light week for earnings. We'll be back in the bank cycles here in a couple weeks. So we'll get to that. But also, the biggest discovery for me today, if you guys didn't know, the trading economics calendar, you could put it in dark mode for I don't know how many weeks. It's been about a year that I've been doing this show. And I just discovered today that there is a dark mode on this. And it just saved my eyes because thank you. I know. I don't know if anyone else had realized that there was one. I know it's not always the case. You guys may check this pretty quick or in the morning before you get ready, kind of seeing what, I mean, I know we might use Financial Juice or some of the others too, but I did not know this had a dark mode, and I was blinding myself for weeks. In fact, I'm in team. I don't really trust you if you don't use dark mode on your charts, just because my eyes, and I know we like to shame Kane and some of the other traders that I know use light mode and have white charts and their candlesticks. It's so bright. And my wife is one of these people that does not use dark mode. And then she shows me something on her phone and it's like, just absolutely blinds me. So I'm very thankful that we now have dark mode on this. I think it actually does present a little better as I'm looking at this and how it's coming through on YouTube. I think this is much better. Wear sunglasses. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to trade with my dark contrast colors and save my eyes. The engineers, coders that were doing it well before any of us were doing this, clearly we're onto something. And I believe there actually is data to back that as far as the health for your eyes by using the darker colors. So anyway, I will get off my soapbox, but I was just so excited that I discovered this because it was after a year of doing this. Apparently, I finally am so fed up that I was like, let me see if there's a way to turn this off. And there is. So anyway, let's talk. Good Lord, 900 lots on the offer on NQ at $22,799. Somebody throwing in some size here on a holiday week. Look at that. Yeah, we got a 300 lot at 99 3/4 and a 600 lot at 99 1/2. Some big dog is stepping in here during Globex. Let's see if it pulls. I'm very curious. But we'll get to that. I got it right here next to where I have the economic calendar. So I'll be watching to see if it fills. I know everybody in the chat is probably watching their Dom too instead of watching me. So that's fine. Tomorrow morning, we lead off with Chicago PMI at, I always hate this, right after the bell, 15 minutes after the bell to provide us with a quick stop out if you're not paying attention. So just a quick reminder, that will be 15 minutes after the open. Oh, they pulled. Rude. That guy just pulled. I hate when they do that. And now we just continue to march higher. So lovely. Anyway, after Chicago PMI, Bostic will be speaking. And then we will have the Dallas Fed Manufacturing Index. And then at 10:30, we will have a 6-month auction. 10:30 Central Time, sorry. Followed by Goolsbee speaking at lunchtime. So plenty of Fed speakers in addition to our lovely Fed chairman here. Jerome Powell, as I said, will be speaking at an event. I don't know if it's hosted by the ECB, but I believe this is a panel that he's doing with Lagarde and maybe somebody else. And it will be somewhat around monetary policy, I would imagine. So right at the New York Open, for RTH, we will have Powell talking and likely giving some aspect of remarks around monetary policy. So definitely is and always can and will likely cause the market to move. So just be careful Tuesday morning as you're trading that is going to be going on. There'll be plenty of things hitting the airwaves and probably a rogue tweet from Trump or two as he's talking about wanting rates at 1% at this point. So I have a whole prediction of how that's going to go next year, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Even with Powell talking, we will still have some more data releases. We do have the S&P manufacturing PMI at 8:45, followed by the ISM PMI at 9 a.m. and JOLTS will be out shortly thereafter at 9. So a lot of gotchas Tuesday morning if you're going to be trading rather. So we will have all of that data. Like I said, it's a weird week where it's a holiday, but they're just kind of cramming everything in for us to hopefully give us some trading opportunities and a few things that will actually move the markets, give us some decent trades, capture points, and then go touch grass. Let's see. Anything else on Tuesday? Dallas Fed services. No. And then Wednesday, very light day. We will have really just the ADP employment change, as well as, really just that, unless you trade. I don't think the EIA numbers move. I know it does for our crude traders and gas traders, but that's something I always pay attention to because I'm not actively trading, I guess, crude that often. And when I do, I'm probably not trading it around these, but you will have your usual crude oil releases as well. And then Thursday, we have non-farm payrolls and the unemployment rate, imports, exports, balance of trade, initial jobless claims, continuing jobless claims. There was one more. Oh, and then that's after. Okay, so then we will have the S&P Composite PMI, Services PMI, ISM Service PMI, all at 8:15 Central Time, as well as 9 a.m. with the ISM Services PMI and factory orders. So And then later in the day, you do have Bostic speaking again this week, followed by a 4 and 8 week bill auction. So, as I said, lighter week with the holiday, but everything crammed pretty much into Tuesday and Wednesday. So, plenty of things to keep you on your toes in the pre-market as well as shortly after the bell. I can't believe that guy pulled. So I'm like very upset by that. I was hoping for some aspect of some size and some violence to kick off our Independence Day week, but he moved it. Alex, where is it? I don't feel like, oh, it went up to, or the 600 lot went up to 819 3/4. So we'll keep an eyeball on that as we're kind of rounding out our show here. Let's see. And we're creeping up towards them. But yeah, that's it, guys. Like I said, the biggest event is probably going to be anything that hits the airwaves as well. Hits the airwaves as far as additional trade war conversations leading into the 90-day pause on July 9th. But we'll see as things shake out in the early parts of this week, as well as the other gotcha is, are they going to finally pass the big, beautiful bill? I know it's been making its rounds in the Senate and House with probably more chaos out of our lovely legislative branch, but we'll see, because that could also provide a violent move when it does in fact pass, or there's whispers that it's going to pass. I would imagine that could move the market this week as well. I know they are hopeful and optimistic that that will be passed and ready for Trump's signature prior to July 4th. So we'll see how that shakes out this week as well. But that, as well as Trump pulling another situation like he did on Friday with Canada, with other countries, as well as the Powell conversation with some of the European Central Bank bankers as well. So that will be things that I'd be paying attention to and watching out for this week. But yeah, so far just continuing to march higher. Sorry, I meant to do my execution chart. So far, just nothing but positive delta and just us continuing to drive higher since the opening tick here down towards the 62.23 mark, which is your week open. So for those of you who like to trade around it, last week you didn't even get the opportunity unless you were deciding to long, basically right off the gap down. But yeah, usually still does provide some decent trading opportunities around that level. So something to watch. That 62, I think I was talking about this too, is that 62.25 kind of spot. So we'll be right around there for the week open in ES as well. Coming in very hot up towards the previous week high as well. That is right here on ES. NQ's got a little more work to do up towards the 825s. But if it fills this big guy at 819s, we may go take out that level. So yeah. Sorry, have not been looking at the chat. J Money, yep, I'm happily home here on NinjaTrader Live. So if you have enjoyed hanging out with me and enjoying my Sunday show, then this is the place to be. Also, if you have not had a chance to check out some of the awesome traders and great people that the NinjaTrader team has put on the air for us throughout the week, it's a good time to hit like and subscribe and put notifications on as well, because there's been some great segments and people that they've had on, in addition to some great traders that are trading kind of the open and mid-morning. You've got my buddy Stowe trading shortly after, or kind of right around that Euro close mark. But then you can come hang out with me and some of my friends in the afternoon. We do trade power hour here live on stream on NinjaTrader Live, and we trade the close, and we do a lot of other fun things, and we talk about a lot of random things that have gone on, and just random topics when the markets are slow, and sometimes we're in that weird afternoon pre-market on close algo where we're stuck in a few point range and there's nothing to do but sit and talk and have some fun. So the afternoon stream has been an awesome place to kind of hang out and wind down your trading day as well. So if you haven't checked it out, I'd highly recommend you do it. So there'll be like I said, it'll be a little bit of a of a weird week this week because we've got the shortened day on Thursday, and then Friday we're all closed. So everyone will be enjoying their 4th of July holiday. But the following week, we'll be back full throttle with the full team and everybody having a great time trading here. So if you have not tuned in, highly recommend you do it. But this is the place to see me at the very least. Oh, are we going to do this? So, chat, is this guy going to pull once again? Is he going to spoof this order and run away with this 600 lot that's sitting at 819 3/4? Hey, Leo. That's the other thing, too. I believe Big Cat himself will be back this week. If you've missed his trading and you've been stuck with the peanut gallery that is me, XY, and Stowe, the master himself will be back to show you guys how to trade, and you guys he can answer all of the questions that you've been holding back, because you know that Stowe, XY, and I may not have the greatest answer if you're asking things like about RVol. That was great last week. That was, yeah, Leo, you missed. We tried to field some Leo level questions, and it was we might have missed a little bit. So we're thankful you're back, buddy. So hopefully showcase your trading and market knowledge at times when we have not necessarily done our greatest job possible on educating the masses as well as you can sometimes. So we look forward to you being back this week. I know I'm very thankful. But yeah, I kind of want to stay and see if this guy's going to fill this order. But so far just kind of rejecting off last week's high. Yes, and if you did not know, futures will close, the market will close at 1 p.m. Eastern time on Thursday. So your first reminder that I'm sure everybody's going to be talking about this week as well. But just thinking about that, I just realized I'm on ES and I've been wanting to watch NQ. I don't have an NQ execution chart for some reason on this chart book. I've just been very lazy about actually creating one. So we can only watch it on ES. But Canada might announce a deal tonight with Trump, maybe spike gap coming. Well, that would be violent, anticlimactic, with him basically saying pound sand last Friday and giving us that little bit of volatility towards the end of the day. That was probably a great trade if you were able to catch the long and that retracement. I know I tried to knife catch from my couch, took a violent stop out, and then said, I'm not doing that again and ruining my Friday. So, and then eventually it rebid. I think I was trying to catch somewhere in like the 640s, 650s, I think. And it just walloped me down to 600 and then took off. So I was like, I'm done. I know, Alex, it really was like everyone knew. I think everybody that has, if you're active in the markets, you probably saw this move, this retracement, or at least we were going to partially retrace that violent move to the downside at some point. I got too eager, and then it set up perfectly, but I just was like, no, I'm not going to do it again. I took the one stab and, paid for it. I got in early. That's my fault. I was kind of just basing it off like just some other structure that I was seeing, and it was a mistake. It was like a knee-jerk trade, just trying to know that we were probably going to V out of it, and that was a mistake. So when you try to knife catch instead of waiting for it actually to make sense, and for example, I could have then caught it on the upside instead of trying to catch it on the downside. Calling the bottom is usually a fool's errand. So, Gene, you can see those large orders. You need level 2 data though. So if you have level 1, you need to subscribe to kind of the full market depth from the CME in your personal account, or however you are actively getting access to the data. You just need level 2, and then you throw it on a DOM or however you like to look at it, and you'll see it fully on the ask, that 600 lot sitting there. So that's what you would need. It's just level 2 data to see it. Do I see any large orders on ES currently? Yeah, there is a 9. Oh, geez. I'm surprised nobody called that out. There is a 900 lot, 892 sitting at 42.50. on ES. So somebody out here spoofing size. Sup, Jay? Good to see you, buddy. Heard a rumor that the 600 lot was actually Nick's order. No, unfortunately, the only person that not spoofs size, the only person that can throw that kind of size around here is probably Kane. But I'm sure he's asleep already. Or I think he was traveling this weekend, but he likes to throw around those large orders. But yeah, there is an 892 lot sitting at 42.50. So somebody's spoofing size around here. Yeah, Trader X. So there is that 900 lot sitting there, but that's interesting that kind of coinciding orders a little bit. Not as much on NQ because that just needs to go a little bit higher. Yes, that would be taking out last week's high and falling into this blue square box of death is what I'm calling it for the early parts of this week. But no, I just have been watching for if there is a large seller kind of stepping in this area. And we'll see. Like I said, it's just the spot I'm going to be watching to see, do we kind of get a violent wick up into this, and then do we fade back into last week's range? And then I'd be happily looking to maybe try to get a larger trade to traverse some of this from last week. Yeah, it's so super interesting. It's funny because we randomly do see in some of the overnights. I don't think I've seen one on a Sunday in a while, but somebody throwing around size, at least on the order book. They don't always fill, but it's been interesting. I haven't seen them in I would say a couple months, even probably since the good time to buy rally started post Liberation Day. I feel like it was kind of, maybe there was one or two in that kind of range cycle we were in, but after that, once we started marching up towards 6,000s and kind of gapped up and went, I think above 57, you haven't really seen that. Like there has been nobody with that kind of size stepping in, and he just pulled it again. So this guy just joking around at this point. The ES one is still there, but they just moved it down to 62.40s. I don't believe any of these right now after that just continues to pull on NQ. I'm starting to just not believe that these are real. And this is just somebody, because now they just moved it up to 829 3/4. So this jokester is just having a game. It's probably someone, it's probably them. They are watching this stream. They know I'm on air. They know I'm talking about them, and they're just trying to be funny. So we know you're out there. Anyway, all right. I think I've rambled enough for all you guys this evening. So we'll do a quick recap at ES, and then I will let you all get out of here. And then you guys can sit and watch to see the logic that these are probably never going to fill right now. So anyway, you are them. Nick stream all night. I would, guys. Like I always make the joke that one of these days I'm gonna make Stowe do a marathon, like a marathon Sunday, Monday with me. We're going to stay on stream all night from Sunday Globex Open to the RTH Open. And I've never actually asked him to do that with me, but I feel like that'd be fun. We're just going to stay up all night. We'll get Kane to come in too for the London Open to join us as we are teetering into sleep somehow, but still on screen. I mean, that'd be a lot of fun. It just would be the most ridiculous and pointless stream. I don't know who'd be watching it kind of post. I mean, probably about by 10 p.m. my time, I'd be like, who's watching this? Like who's still up on the West Coast actually caring that we're still on stream, especially if it was like a lackluster. It'd be fun if we did it when we were like kind of some of those like Bank of Canada, the Bank of Canada fiasco from like last August. Like that'd be a lot of fun if it was like a Globex session like that, when there's actual tradable opportunities and things. But outside of that, I mean, it would just be probably a snooze fest, and God knows what we'd even be talking about during a marathon Sunday, Monday stream. But I don't know, maybe the day will come and it will make sense, and we'll have fun, and we'll bring people on throughout the evening and early morning hours, and then eventually hand it off to Crudele and the crew for the morning, as we are absolute zombies. I mean, I would watch it. It'd be a lot of fun. I just don't know if that's great television for everybody else. So Anyway, looking at ES, as I said, I'm watching my blue box of death here to see, is there a large seller between kind of the 62 52s down to kind of the 42s? Like, I'm just want to see, do we get that wick up? Is there a reoffer? And then do we fall back into last week's range? Is there any reason to say that, no, we're not going to go make an all-time high, a new all-time high, and potentially march up to 6300s? I mean, yeah, I could absolutely see it. I just don't know if it's going to happen this week. It's just an area as we get into kind of July into next week as well. Like, I'm just kind of probably, I know my pivot's down here at 6100s, but I'm probably going to be moving it up a little bit higher into this area, depending on how this week kind of shakes out. Once we get past probably tomorrow with end of month flows and things, like something stupid could happen. Who knows? But I just like this to potentially reoffer to look to kind of retrace some of this action, if not down here towards the 6180s, kind of the low of that Canada trade tweet, to see, does that make any sense? In the event that we do get some sort of liquidation this week, I would expect us to find some buyers back down here towards my pivot, as well as the top edge of this multi-week balance that we were in. I'm not expecting much outside of, honestly, kind of that 100 or so point range at the most this week. With the shortened week, I have low expectations. If we were even tighter than that inside of this Canada candle, that wouldn't shock me much either. But we'll see. There's a lot of things going on this week, so we'll see how it all kind of shakes out. But expectations for me are low this week as far as range expansion to the upside or to the downside. I'm going to get my points, get out, go enjoy America's birthday, and unfortunately sedate my poor golden retriever who hates fireworks with a passion, hates thunder, hates fireworks. If it starts raining, he starts shaking. So my poor dog, I'm going to hang out with him and take care of my daughter this week. So lighter week for me. I look forward to hanging out with you guys a little bit different. I think we're shaking up the schedule a little bit on Trade the Close. Leo's going to be back. And yeah, so be fun to hang out with you guys. Thank you all for tuning in here this evening. Please, if you have not already, please do hit the thumbs up button. It does help me out. It helps the stream out, helps more people find us and hang out with us here on Sunday evenings to not trade, but to talk about where we may go this week. For the time being, that order is still sitting there at 829.75s, and on ES has broken up into two orders at 41 and 42 even. So we'll keep an eye out on those to see if they actually fill. I don't think they will, but we'll see. In the meantime, guys, thank you all for being here. I really much appreciate it. Please tune in tomorrow morning. The rest of the crew will be back to give you guys your guidance and pre-market prep, as well as even trade the open with you. So tune in then. In the meantime, have a good night, guys. Thank you all for being here, and I will see you guys later this week. Take care.